Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us in another Student Zone session here at Build 2020. We're really excited to have you. As a quick reminder, this is our Microsoft Code of Conduct, specifically for Build 2020. Basically, be kind. We're here to find community, friends, be friendly, be kind, and let's hear from some amazing speakers on this panel. It's my pleasure to introduce Sasha as the moderator and Lejay, Michael, and Patrick as former Microsoft interns, now turned full-time Microsoft employees. Sasha, I'll pass it off to you.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Super happy to be here today. I'm here today with three of our amazing former interns that I've had the pleasure of working with for the past couple of years. They exemplify Microsoft culture. They're empowered to bring their authentic selves to work. So I'm excited to hand it over to Lejay to introduce herself.
It on my phone.
Okay, we have Lejay here. I'm going to ask her to introduce herself. Give me 1 second. Maybe we pass it off to Patrick first, and then we'll come over to Lejay in about 30 seconds.
Chat about account.
So let's maybe pass it over to Patrick.
All right. Hello. Sorry for the technical things. We're making it work here on Teams Live. But yeah, my name is Patrick Lyons. I am in my first year of full-time work now. I've been at Microsoft full-time for about 10 months. Before that, I interned in the summer of 2018. Just to give you a little bit of background context on my own journey, I interned in supply chain within our devices organization across our whole book of business within, Xbox, Surface, etc. in demand planning. While I was an intern, I took on a project in mechanical engineering. I'm a mechanical engineer by background from the University of Texas at Austin. And now as a full-time employee, I am a mechanical sourcing engineer, which is essentially the bridge between mechanical engineering, supply chain, business, all sorts of things like that. So basically, I buy and source our hardware I buy and source parts for our hardware across Xbox controllers, and Surface accessories. And that is a little bit of background on my story at Microsoft so far.
Wonderful. So we'll hand it over to Michael to introduce himself as well.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Lejay. I'll give her the thumbs up on my phone. And we are using amazing Microsoft technology. So Lejay will introduce herself.
This isn't quite what we expected, but hi. I hope you all can hear me. I'm just going to get started. Hello, beautiful people. My name is Lejay, and I'm really excited to be here with you all today. I know a lot of you guys are students. Maybe you're taking like AP computer science classes, or you're just starting college. And that's pretty similar to my journey here to Microsoft. So I am originally from Denver, Colorado. I studied computer science at North Carolina A&T. Aggie Pride. And I graduated just over a year ago, and I've been working at Microsoft full time since then. So when I was in college, I had one internship, and then I transitioned into full time from there. So now I work as a program manager on the Microsoft Mobile and Cross-Device Experience team. We build experiences that empower people to be mobile. So using tools like the Microsoft Launcher on Android is one of our products. Microsoft SwiftKey, the SwiftKey keyboard, and the Your Phone app on the PC, which is what I work on. And I really love it. Not just because I work on it or anything, but I really believe in our product. So with the power of the Your Phone app, you can pair your Android phone to your Windows 10 PC, and you can send text messages and see your photos right from your PC. You can even make calls and manage your notifications and have a real seamless cross-device experience with our app. So our team is pretty young at Microsoft. Our app is maybe a year or so old, and our team is really agile, and we move fast, and we operate a lot like a startup, which I really enjoy. So a fun fact about my internship previously, my friends and I drove about an hour north of Seattle to Snohomish County, and 8 of us got into a plane and flew 15,000 feet up into the air, and we just jumped out, and it was epic. So I got to check skydiving off of my bucket list while I was an intern, which was really cool. So I'm super excited to tell you more about my internship experience and what it's like to be at Microsoft.
That's awesome. And Lajay, speaking of like cross mobile and desktop technologies, this is awesome that we could use Microsoft Teams on 2 devices and be able to chat, face to face and still have this semblance of, it's almost as if you're here in the room with me. But my name is Michael Brevel. I'm the 3rd intern on this panel. I interned at Microsoft for 2 summers actually, and I grew up here in the Seattle area. So actually everything behind me, this is my childhood bedroom that I lived in, and right behind me is one of my baby photos over here on this side. So it's pretty awesome to be living and working at a place that's so close to where I grew up. I actually applied to a Microsoft internship when I was in high school and got rejected. So I actually didn't get into my internship, and it was in college, my junior summer of college, that I actually applied and became a Microsoft intern. So it's been phenomenal, and I loved an intern. Now I work full time on the Windows IoT team. And what that means is working on, how can we use Windows for the next generation of technology beyond the phone and the laptop to smart thermostats, smart watches, smart anything really. So it's a very fun team and very fun projects, and I'm super excited to be on this panel and answer questions.
Wonderful. Thank you. Love hearing a little bit more about all of you. Such unique, interesting stories, and exciting to see the impact you're making today at Microsoft. So I'm going to pivot a bit. Can you tell me a little bit more about your former intern projects? And we'll go ahead and start with Patrick.
Hello again. So my former intern project, I was a supply chain planning intern, specifically in demand planning. So what that means is basically we're getting signals from all over the world about how many of any given device we anticipate that we are going to sell. And so the role of a demand planner is to take all of that forecast data and synthesize it in such a way that we can draw meaningful conclusions about trends over time, and then use that information to make predictions moving forward for what the demand is going to look like, changes we might need to make to demand, things like that. So my intern project essentially involved pulling together all this data into various meaningful views. And I believe we calculated like 14 different metrics from this data and put them into, graphical form so that we could report up to leaders and help make those decisions. And so the thing that I think is really cool to emphasize about this is that even as an intern, I was working on a project that was genuinely meaningful. It's the kind of thing where if I wasn't on the team as an intern, they 100% would have had a full-time employee doing exactly what I did. But the other thing that I want to emphasize is that I came from a mechanical engineering background. And so coming from that background into a supply chain internship, more on the business side of things, I expressed to my manager pretty much from the beginning of my internship that, I had an interest in mechanical engineering, and he was fully supportive of that and said to network with as many, mechanical engineers as I could throughout my internship. And I did exactly that. And what that led to is about 6 weeks into my internship, I took on a second intern project on the mechanical engineering side. And the thing that was really cool about this was that I basically just talked to various engineering managers and expressed that I wanted to take on an engineering project, and various people kind of pointed me towards other connections who they think might be most likely to offer an additional project. And eventually I found one who didn't tell me explicitly what to do. He simply said, if you want to take on an engineering project, all you need to do is think of a problem with an existing Microsoft product and solve it with an engineering solution. And so that's exactly what I did. I created an additional Surface accessory that would allow for the enhanced magnetic attachment of the Surface Pen to the Surface laptop and book. And that was a project that didn't exist at the beginning of the summer, but my manager and the connections I made were supportive of me taking this on. And so by the end of the internship, I had completed 2 projects projects, and that is what led me to full-time in a role that kind of weaved the two together. So that's my time at Microsoft as an intern.
Wonderful. Thanks, Patrick. Let's turn it over to Michael.
Awesome. I'm actually going to turn it over to Lejay.
So a little bit about my internship experience. I was on the Windows Shell Devices team. So I was a program manager on the Surface Hub. So if you don't know what a Surface Hub is, like imagine an 84-inch Surface device, like essentially like a smart whiteboard that runs on a custom version of Windows. That's designed for like enterprise collaboration. So from a user experience perspective, the device could be very large and immersive, and the user interface is really tough to navigate because it's not like a smaller form factor like the display you're probably watching me on right now. So my intern project was to help my team understand these unique interactions with such a large form factor device and understand how we can better set up the user interface so that it feels more natural, the same way like a tablet or laptop would. So I wrote technical specifications to design 3 different components in the Shell UI. I worked with our design and engineering teams to actually build those components. And then we did a series of research studies throughout the whole summer to actually put these controls in front of users and see if they actually resonate and if our improved UI is something that we want to ship. So I really got to observe the research and like analytical process that goes into delivering a Microsoft product and all of the like effort that goes into like every single component. And it was really surprising because from a user perspective, you know, we don't always get to see like how much thought and analysis goes into like each and every component, every button, you know, every icon. It has a place. So it was really great to see 2 things. Well, one, the power of user feedback. All of the feedback that comes from our users into Microsoft just has so much weight here. And 2, Microsoft puts a lot of value on that feedback, and we react to it and we integrate it into the products that we build. So it was really exciting to really delve into the research that goes into building the products that we ship here at Microsoft.
Awesome.
So that's all.
Thanks, Lejay. Again, it's kind of fun to see Lejay's face on like my body. It has, you know, it's almost like the face swap in real life. But my project for the summertime, like I said, I worked in the same exact team for 2 summers that I was at Microsoft, and I actually sat in the same exact office. It's the same office I sit in today when I go into the office. And my project as an intern was to really reevaluate the whole Windows IoT ecosystem, from having an idea for building some type of new IoT device, all the way through ODMs, OEMs, ISVs, SIs. These are all acronyms of different players in the marketplace, to final end consumers. And the question I was trying to solve was, how could we encourage all of these different players in the system, of which there are sometimes, you know, close to a dozen or 2 dozen, to want to adopt Windows IoT as opposed to some other platform. It was really fun because I had complete ownership. I was, as an intern, talking to customers who were selling millions of devices to hear their experiences. I would have meetings with my manager and my skip manager, and eventually had meetings with different directors in the Windows IoT organization to learn about what products we could be building to better serve our customers and our clients. I think what I really loved about my work was that it was very much customer focused and customer first. And those were 2 huge aspects of my internship at Microsoft that I didn't see coming through in some of my peers' internships at other companies. So that was the project I worked on, and really I loved it so much.
Wonderful. I love the common theme here I'm seeing is that you, as an intern, you get to do impactful work at Microsoft just as a full-time employee would do. Interns have access to all of our leaders, all of our resources. So excellent. I will pivot over to Microsoft culture now. Our CEO, Satya Nadella, empowers all of us to leverage Microsoft as a platform to pursue our passions and bring our authentic selves to work, bring our diversity to work. So I would like to ask you all, how have you felt empowered as a full-time employee and an intern to bring your whole self to work? And how did you, and are you, leveraging the Microsoft platform to pursue your passions? We'll go ahead and start with Patrick.
So another thing that was really awesome from the get-go with my internship was just how supportive my manager was in all capacities. And one day I came to my manager and I said to him, or I asked him, is there any sort of a platform in which Microsoft employees can share their passions and their interests with each other in any sort of like learning-based environment? And he said he wasn't really sure if that was something that existed or not. So I looked into it, couldn't really find anything. And so what I wanted to do was create that. And the reason for it is because every single time that I met another Microsoft intern, I was impressed by something. Like there was always something that was just like really cool that they were interested in, or really impressive that they were doing inside or outside of work. And I just thought like how meaningful it would be if interns had a platform which they could share that with a broader audience, not just, you know, in our one-off conversations. And so I went about creating something that eventually became Treehouse Talks. And ironically, Michael Burvell, who's on the call, he is one of the people who helped me create that because of things he had worked on. He'll touch on more himself. But Treehouse Talks was exactly that. It was a TED Talk style platform for interns to share their passions with each other. And it was hosted at the tree houses on campus because that is a thing. There are tree houses on the Microsoft campus. You can actually work in them. You can book conference rooms there. Super cool space. But I hosted these talks there. And the way in which that worked was that interns could apply to share their ideas, and there would be somewhere around 5 or 6 interns who would give like a little mini TED Talk. It didn't have to be like super prepared or rehearsed, but it was always about what they were passionate about, what they were interested in, what they wanted to share with the broader intern audience. And it just became this really special thing that kind of embodied Microsoft's culture, because Satya wanted people to use Microsoft as a platform to bring their full selves to work. And now this Treehouse Talks environment allowed people to share a piece of themselves with the broader intern community that might not have ever been shared otherwise. You know, at some workplaces, there might be this complete and total separation of work and life where maybe people don't feel comfortable talking about what they're passionate about outside of work. And I didn't want that. And I don't think Microsoft in general wants that. Like for me, I am passionate about content creation. I'm passionate about fitness. I'm a fitness coach outside of work. And all of those things were things that I got to bring to Treehouse Talks. I got to share my own passions with the other interns. And that led to conversations with people that may not have ever happened before. Like I got to learn that other coworkers and peers, interns that were sharing this experience with me, maybe also had interest in fitness or something that I liked. Or maybe they weren't previously interested in it, but now they wanted to know more. Whatever the case, Treehouse Talks allowed for that. And one thing that I think is really cool looking back on is that the university recruiting team, like who is basically hosting this event that you're seeing from the interns right now, they supported me in that. They attended an event, they supported the events in general, and then that allowed me to continue this as a full-time employee. So interns still continue to be able to share their passions with each other in this environment. And that was just super rewarding to see that something that I built as an intern was supported by my manager, was supported by the broader intern culture, and then continued after I was an intern. So that was my experience.
Thanks, Patrick. We'll turn it over to Michael.
Awesome. So I'll go next with my experience as a Microsoft intern and kind of building a cool project. When I first came into Microsoft, one of my goals for myself was that I wanted to meet a bunch of different higher level executives. I was just so fascinated by the world of management, especially at one of the largest tech companies in the world. So what I had decided to do was email the CEO. So in my first week at Microsoft, I sent an email to Satya Nadella, and I said, hey, let's get lunch. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I thought he would just respond and say yes. Of course, his schedule was busy, so I think his chief of staff, who now I'm good friends with, responded and said, hey, probably doesn't have time. So I said, okay, well, if I can't get lunch with the chief, executive officer, maybe with the chief financial officer. So I emailed Amy Hood and said, Amy, would you be willing to get lunch with me? And she said, oh, maybe not one-on-one. So I got that response and I thought, okay, not one-on-one. Maybe if I get a group of people. So I responded back and said, Amy, if I have 15 other friends of mine that are interns, would you get lunch with all 15 of us? And she was like, yeah, sure, find the time on the calendar. And this was kind of the moment when I realized I think Microsoft is super passionate about the growth mindset, giving people a chance to grow on the daily, to develop new skills and learnings and insights. And that was kind of what this project started to become. I started to email a bunch of different executives across the company, asking them if they would do group lunches with myself and a dozen or 2 dozen different Microsoft interns and friends and peers. So this is kind of what I started in my first internship. And by the second internship, I had wanted to grow this program to be even larger and even bigger. So I pulled together a team of people. This is how I first met Patrick, because he heard about what I was doing and I heard about what he was doing, and we started becoming really good buddies and helping each other out, which is kind of this idea of mutually beneficial relationships where we're both really helping each other to become better through giving and empowering each other. But by the second summer, we made this into kind of an intern supported, university recruiting supported program, where we had about 1,500 interns getting lunch throughout the summer with 140 different EVPs and CVPs and SVPs at Microsoft, essentially different vice presidents. And of course, eventually was able to get lunch with Satya and a couple other interns. That was, I think, one of the most inspiring conversations I've had to date. But really the broader thing that it taught me was Microsoft is one of these places where you can, if you have a passion, there's always an outlet to pursue it, right? Whether it's very technical or whether it's, more like me, where it's more social engineering. There's this opportunity and this mindset at Microsoft where people can really bring their full selves to the office and bring their full passions to the office. I think Patrick is a great example of this through the Chi House talks and also through his fitness. And I love business, learning, interviews, podcasts, and journalism. And that's kind of what this project also started to become. So I have Lejay on the phone. I think we have a slide that we'll use. But Lejay, you can go ahead and talk about your experience as well.
Yeah. So similar to both Michael and Patrick, I have a desire for building community. And when I joined Microsoft, I noticed that the developer community for interns was really strong, and the PM community hadn't quite been fostered yet, right? So I seeked out an opportunity to change that, right? So by doing that, or in doing that, I launched a program where PM interns could connect with full-time PM employees to learn from them, understand different areas of the business, and really get the breadth of what PM at Microsoft really is. Because what a PM in Xbox does is totally different than a PM in Azure or, a PM on Surface, right? And PM as a discipline is so broad, and without having those interactions with the PM community, it can be really hard for interns to really understand the role and how they can shine in their prospective PM role at Microsoft, right? So, if you ever want to pursue your passion at Microsoft, I really encourage you to reflect on a problem that you want to solve, or reflect on what you enjoy doing the most, or learn to sense the needs of others and come up with a creative solution that would fulfill those needs, right? And Microsoft will give you the necessary resources, the freedom, the support to be co-producers in your own Microsoft experience. Like, Microsoft truly wants to create an environment where employees and interns are all encouraged to practice being that best version of yourself that you always dreamed of being, and empower you to pursue, if you want to build a community, or if you want to make a musical, or, host talks with executive leadership, Microsoft will help you do that. So when you're an intern at Microsoft, I really just encourage you to bring your ideas, bring your passion, be courageous and bold, tell us what you'd like to be doing during your internship, because Microsoft will do what we can to look for ways to give you the space to make those dreams come true, and to help you foster those passions and start impacting Microsoft as a broader organization. So that's how we all really leverage Microsoft as a platform.
Wonderful. And I will note that Patrick, Michael, and Lejay, when they interned with us, a couple summers back, the fact that they co-created their Microsoft experience, they brought their whole selves to work, it had actually inspired our university recruiting team to create a program called Co-Creation. So it's all about empowering interns across the world to do exactly what Patrick, Michael, and Lejay have done. Just bring their authentic selves. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. We're going to move now to answer audience Q&A. I know we are almost at time, so we'll just answer a couple questions, but a couple of themes I've seen are, so we have a number of interns that are here with us virtually this summer. And so those in the audience are curious to learn more about how you're making the most out of your internship or your full-time experience right now. How can an intern make the most out of their virtual experience this summer? What are some tips and tricks that you all can provide just based off of your experiences? And we can hand it over to Michael.
Yeah, I'd be happy to tackle that. I think one thing that's really interesting about the virtual experience is that it's new for everybody. Everyone is learning. And the benefit of this, whether you're at Microsoft or at another company, or even at a small company or startup, is that you can do your work from anywhere. And I think that's a little underrated. And I'll talk about it from the perspective of meeting with different executives. There's this chance where you can have these 5-minute check-ins or these 10-minute check-ins with your peers or your coworkers, because there is no transportation time between home and work. What used to be on average 1.5 hours per day, of which Americans would travel to and from work, is now this chance of rolling out of bed for 5 minutes to get to your laptop. So one of the best ways that I advise all the interns I am mentoring now to take advantage of the virtual internship is to use that as an opportunity to reach out to people that you usually wouldn't, to organize coffee chats or just even 15-minute conversations virtually. And whether you're at Microsoft or not, I think that's something that you could really do to leverage this unique experience and opportunity.
Perfect. And just because we're short on time, I'm going to address one more question and hand it over to Patrick for this one. What would you say is the best way that those in the audience, if they're not interns already and want to be at some point in the future, what's the best way that they can prepare themselves this summer to make themselves the most competitive as possible for fall's recruiting season?
Awesome question. So I had the opportunity to speak to my recruiter, to speak to the person who actually interviewed me for Microsoft. I had the opportunity to speak to them after I completed the internship and just pick their brain. And they said something that I'll never forget. And they said that when people are reviewing resumes, it's not about like you have to have another internship. What it is about is that you have to have done something that shows you did something you didn't have to do for the sake of your own growth and learning. So that could be another internship. Maybe you've interned at a company or two previously. It could be research, it could be study abroad, it could be pursuing a passion or a side project and developing it out. Anything that you can do to show that like you're going above and beyond just getting an education. Not discounting the importance of an education, but there are so many things that you can do to continue your growth. Especially if you don't have an internship, use that time to your advantage. Use that time to put into something that you care about and that you can walk away from the end of the summer saying like, yeah, I did something that matters that I cared about in my life, and now I can share that with future companies.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this session. Definitely reach out to us on LinkedIn if you have any additional questions. I know there was a lot in the chat, but thank you, Michael, Patrick, and Lejay for sharing more about your stories and tips and tricks for a virtual internship, as well as bringing your whole self to work. Moving on to the next portion, at the end of this, please do check out our Q&A section. There will be some great information in the chat about additional resources for student learnings on GitHub. Please do fill out the anonymous survey. We can only get better and improve and add what you need to hear from us if you fill out that survey. So please do that afterwards. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.